You could call me a Marvel fan. I like some of the Marvel movies, but I'm also not a Marvel fanboy. Like, I acknowledge their shortcomings. I'm well aware of them. Like, they can feel kind of bland or like factory produced, and those are criticisms I generally agree with. Some of these movies are really bland and really forgettable. I'm talking movies like Thor, I'm talking movies like Ant-Man, I'm talking movies like Black Panther, I'm talking movies like Doctor Strange 1. You know what I mean? Like, Doctor Strange 1 had some pretty cool visuals, but the story was kind of eh. The character of Doctor Strange also wasn't very interesting in that movie. He worked better as like a side character in like the Avengers movies. But this new Doctor Strange movie, I really liked it. I really, really thought it was like pretty fantastic. I kind of loved it a little bit. Going into it, I expected great visuals, and that's about it. I had hoped that Raimi would be able to like navigate the Marvel system and be able to get his creative vision through and not only have striking visuals but the other things that he excels at, like quality character work and funny dialogue that's not over the top, or you know just heart. And that's really what you're looking for in a movie like this, is you want it to feel like it was made by an artist, made by somebody that cares. And I didn't have faith that Marvel would really just let Raimi do his thing. I mean, ever since Endgame came out, the number one thing I've been looking for from Marvel movies is to be less safe. I just want them to mix it up, play around with it, get funky with it. Get jiggy with it. I mean, come on. Experiment a little bit. And so far, the movies that have come out have kind of been a mixed bag in that respect. Like, Black Widow was like so bland. It was like the most forgettable Marvel movie. Eternals was just straight up bad. And Spider-Man, I really liked that movie, but it wasn't that crazy different or new or unique. It did have the interesting like multiverse stuff that carries over into this movie, where there's all three Spider-Men on screen at once, and that's really cool and something I never thought we would see. But it's not like it was experimental filmmaking, and it's not like this is either, but it is different and it feels unique. It feels like a vision, like somebody crafted it. That's what it feels like to me. I was worried that they would like overstuff this movie with like a fuck ton of like cameos and like stuff it to the brim with like just annoying bullshit. That's what I was worried about, and they really didn't do that at all. Yeah, there were cameos, and there were times where they kind of pushed it, but it never crossed that line into obnoxious for me. Like I said, going in, I was expecting great visuals, and I was not disappointed at all. Sam Raimi really delivered in the visual department. And I don't just mean like cool CGI, I mean like actually cool in-camera effects and angles that had that Sam Raimi secret sauce. There's just an abundance of really cool, visually striking shots in this movie that they feel like they're made by an artist. And that's great. You don't always get that from Marvel movies. Another thing I really appreciated about the movie was that it kind of moves at this breakneck pace. It doesn't slow down too much. It keeps moving. It doesn't stop. It doesn't get boring. It just goes. It strikes this brilliant balance between all these new and interesting and unique ideas without ever becoming overstuffed. It has a slightly darker tone than most Marvel movies. There's not as much like comedy. There is some comedy, but it's not like Iron Man where he tells a joke every 4 seconds. There's a section of this movie that is shockingly violent for a Marvel movie. I cannot stress that enough. It's shockingly violent for a Marvel movie. It has this kind of macabre vibe to it that's consistent throughout, this kind of Lovecraftian kind of thing going on. And that plays into the visuals of the movie that are really striking, and I love the look of this movie. The breakneck pace of this movie is largely a positive for me, but it does come at the cost of developing a couple things that could have used a little bit more. Like the romance between Doctor Strange and fucking Regina George. It could have used a little bit more for me. It fell a little bit flat. I understand what Sam Raimi was trying to do. I get it. I can visualize it, but the movie isn't really putting in the work. And I think a part of that is the fact that Bumbo, what's his name? Benedict Cumberbatch and Regina George don't really have that great of chemistry. I think if the two actors had better chemistry, it would have worked a lot better, but what the fuck do I know? There's also the Wanda problem. I think Wanda as a character and as a villain in this movie works pretty well, mostly because it's a character that we understand. She got a whole TV show to kind of develop her motive. If you didn't watch that show, maybe her character is going to suffer for you when you watch this movie. But either way, it is a character that has a certain level of development and that we understand. That is really what makes a good villain to me, is a character that you understand their motives. I know where she's coming from. It makes sense that a person would feel this way or act this way. It feels realistic to me on an emotional level, and obviously not on a physical level, but on an emotional level it feels real. She is a heinous bitch in this movie, though. She does some awful shit in this movie, but unfortunately, where her character leaves off at the end of WandaVision and where she is at the beginning of this movie, they're two different places. There was off-screen development, and that's kind of a problem. You can follow the breadcrumbs from how she got from point A to point B, but you're not really shown that descent from where she was in this show, where she did a bad thing, but she knows it was wrong, and she's like, I'm gonna go live in the wilderness and not do bad things anymore, to now being where she is in this movie, where she is evil. They tell you, they're like, oh, the Necronomic, what is it called? The Darkhold, it makes you bad if you use it a lot. And it's like, you told me that, and it makes sense, and I'm following along, but it would have been nice to see that, man. Like, that is probably my biggest flaw with the movie, that Wanda feels like she's in a different place than she was before, and you're not shown that change. You're told about that change. A similar thing happens, it's not as serious, but a similar thing happens with the character Baron Mordo. In case you haven't seen the first Doctor Strange, or you have perhaps forgotten it, Baron Mordo was a good guy in that movie, and it ends with him deciding that the Doctor Strange and the wizards are bad, and he wants to kill him. And he leaves, and he's like, I'm done with this. And they tease at the very end, in the end credits, that he's going around killing all these wizards. And then that plot is never followed up on in any other movie, because it's a Doctor Strange plot, and this is Doctor Strange 2. But in this movie, Doctor Strange sees Baron Mordo from another universe, and he says, oh, that guy, we used to be cool, but then he snapped, and he devoted his life to trying to kill me. It's like, when did that happen? When did it happen, Steven? It never happened on film, and I'm okay with them dropping plot lines if it's in favor of introducing better ones that are more interesting. But don't drop a plot line and then reintroduce it and pretend like you never dropped it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get into spoilers now. If you don't want the movie spoiled, skip to the time that's on the screen. Okay? So John Krasinski shows up as Mr. Fantastic. And this is a very popular like internet fan cast that's been around for a lot of years because he kind of looks like Mr. Fantastic. Is it good casting? I don't know. He barely did anything in the movie. I'm a big fan of the Fantastic Four. Like, I love the Fantastic Four. I can't get enough of that shit. I'm not sold on John Krasinski. I mean, he's decent in this movie. He does like there's one part where for a guy who's generally supposed to be the most intelligent man in the Marvel Universe, he makes a pretty stupid decision where he tells Wanda, he's like, hey, you better knock it off because my buddy here, Black Bolt, yeah, he can talk at you and kill you. And Wanda's like, oh great, now I know what his power is, and he can't use his power if he can't talk, so let me just remove his mouth from his face because I have infinite powers and I can rewrite reality. Why would you tell her that, John? Why'd you tell her that? Why didn't you just let him do it? Let's talk about Charles Xavier. We have watched this dude die 3 times now. In X-Men 3, he got blown up. And then in Logan, he got stabbed. And now he's getting his neck snapped. Like, how many times do I have to watch this dude die before they just recast him? That's another thing. The cameos, these alternate versions of familiar characters that show up, they don't go too overboard for me. I've seen people that online that are like disappointed with the characters that are included in the movie, or they're disappointed by the lack of multiverse traversal, because they really, in essence, only go to like 2 different universes in this movie. 3 if you count the normal one. But I like that they didn't go to a million different universes and interact with 14,000 different characters from different movies. And like, there were people online saying that like Tom Cruise was going to show up and be Iron Man, and I don't want that. Do you want that? I don't want that. That sounds like sensory overload where it's just a bunch of shit. Like, what's the movie even about at that point? Is the movie about anything when you do that, or is it just about showing off shit? Did you actually want Ben Affleck's Daredevil to show up? Did you want Lou Ferrigno in this movie? I would have hated it if Lou Ferrigno showed up. I would have been like, get this out of here. I don't want this. So the characters that do pop up are Professor X, and he's one of the ones that they kind of went a little overboard on, that I can't get funky with it. He had a cool little sequence where he went into Wanda's mind and he said, I'm gonna get the other Wanda out of your mind because there's 2 Wandas, 1 mind, and it makes sense in the movie, but I'm not going to explain it to you. That's a cool, like, moment, and he works in the movie. Where I kind of draw the line, where I get a little annoyed, is when he shows up, they play the 1997 or I think it's 97 X-Men cartoon theme song for like a second. For like a split second, you hear that shit, and I'm just like, why did you have to do that? Is that necessary? Patrick Stewart's Professor X doesn't even have anything to do with the cartoon. So why would you even do that? I don't get it. The other one that was a little overboard for me was the British Captain America. Not because the character was overboard, but the way she was like introduced. She got like a dramatic reveal where she did like a Power Rangers pose and like looked at the camera like, and I was like, why are you doing that? That character is interesting because it's a British lady that has the Captain America like shield and powers instead of the normal Captain America. And that's interesting because, you know, if you're somebody that hasn't been watching the movies, then you see that character and you're like, "Oh, that's like Captain America, but instead of a white guy, instead of a Buzz Lightyear, it's a British lady." But if you're an attentive viewer that's been watching all of these movies, then you know that's the character from the first Captain America movie, the British lady from that movie. So you're like, "Oh, that's cool." You are rewarded for having paid attention for such a long period of time. But instead, the movie does this reveal and she does the Power Rangers pose like I was talking about. And it's like the movie is insisting that you notice who this is. It's insisting that you remember, and it's insisting that you know what's going on and that you clap and that you cheer in the theater. And I'm not clapping, guys. I'm sorry. I recognize the character. I'm a fan of the movies. I know who this character is. I recognize what's happening here. But I'm not clapping or cheering. There's like 3 other people in the theater with me, man. I'm not doing that shit. They're not clapping. I'm not clapping. Like, what the fuck did you think was gonna happen? And are people, even like diehard fans of these movies, like, is anybody really attached to that character like that? That they have to clap when she's on screen? Do they cry when she gets chopped? Do they cry when she gets chopped in half? Like, did you really care? That is the section I'm talking about, by the way, where all of these characters, all this like council of like Avengers, the Illuminati, they're called. Wanda shows up and she's just like, "I'm killing all of you." And it's really crazy. It's kind of intense for a Marvel movie. Like, I've never seen violence like that in a Marvel movie. It's not that overboard. Let me be clear. I'm exaggerating a little bit. It's not that overboard. The movie is still rated PG-13. It's not like this crazy gore fest. It's just kind of more violent than you would expect. The Black Bolt guy, his like head gets caved in. The British lady gets chopped in half, like I said. Professor X gets his neck snapped. Jim Halpert gets turned into Mr. Spaghetti. I think I'm done with spoilers. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved the visuals. I felt like all the characters were neat. Some of the character progression felt like it was left off screen, which was a little annoying, but it doesn't break the movie at all for me. I still really liked the visuals, and the story is a little stupid inherently, but I like that. I don't want it to be too like super serious. It's about a wizard. It's a wizard movie. I mean, come on. I felt like the cameos were tasteful. They weren't overboard and annoying. And really, this movie confirmed what I already knew, which was nobody does this shit better than Sam Raimi. 8 out of 10. I was really shocked when Morbius showed up, though.